of an upturned moustache beyond. "But is he the chap we have to deal with? Won't the pearl be in the purser's keeping?" Raffles stood at the door, frowning out upon the Solent but for an instant. He turned to me with a sniff.
"My good fellow, do you suppose the whole ship's company knows there's a gem like that aboard? You said that it was worth £100,000. In Berlin they say it's priceless. I doubt if the skipper himself knows that Von Human has it on him."
"And has he?"
"Must have."
"Then we have only him to deal with?" He answered me without a word. Something white was fluttering past once more, and Raffles, stepping forth, made the promenaders three. Part 2. I do not ask to set foot aboard a finer steamship than the Ulan of the Norddeutscher Lloyd, to meet a kindlier gentleman than her commander, or better fellows than his officers. This much at least let me have the grace to admit. I hated the voyage. It was no fault of anybody connected with the ship. It was no fault of the weather, which was monotonously ideal. Not even in my own heart did the reason reside. Conscience and I were divorced at last, and the decree made absolute. With my scruples had fled all fear, and I was ready to revel between bright skies and sparkling sea with the light-hearted detachment of Raffles himself. It was Raffles himself who prevented me, but not Raffles alone. It was Raffles and that colonial minx on her way home from school. What he could see in her, but that begs the question. Of course he saw no more than I did, but to annoy me, or perhaps to punish me for my long defection, he must turn his back on me and devote himself to this chit from Southampton to the Mediterranean. They were always together. It was too absurd. After breakfast they would begin, and go on until 11 or 12 at night. There was no intervening hour at which you might not hear her nasal laugh, or his quiet voice talking soft nonsense into her ear. Of course it was nonsense. Is it conceivable that a man like Raffles, with his knowledge of the world and his experience of women, a side of his character upon which I have purposely never touched, for it deserves another volume, is it credible, I ask, that such a man could find anything but nonsense to talk by the day together to a giddy young schoolgirl? I would not be unfair for the world. I think I have admitted that the young person had points. Her eyes, I suppose, were really fine, and certainly the shape of the little brown face was charming, so far as mere contour can charm. I admit also more audacity than I cared about, with enviable health, mettle, and vitality. I may not have occasion to report any of this young lady's speeches. They would scarcely bear it, and am therefore more anxious to describe her without injustice. I confess to some little prejudice against her. I resented her success with Raffles, of whom in consequence I saw less and less each day. It is a mean thing to have to confess, but there must have been something not unlike jealousy rankling within me. Jealousy there was in another quarter, crude, rampant, undignified jealousy. Captain von Human would twirl his moustaches into twin spires, shoot his white cuffs over his rings, and stare at me insolently through his rimless glasses. We ought to have consoled each other, but we never exchanged a syllable. The captain had a murderous scar across one of his cheeks, a present from Heidelberg, and I used to think how he must long to have Raffles there to serve the same. It was not as though von Human never had his innings. Raffles let him go in several times a day, for the malicious pleasure of bowling him out as he was "getting set." Those were his words when I taxed him disingenuously with obnoxious conduct toward a German on a German boat. "You'll make yourself disliked on board."
"By von Human merely."
"But is that wise when he's the man you've got to diddle?"
"The wisest thing I ever did. To have chummed up with him would have been fatal, the common dodge."
I was consoled, encouraged, almost content. But I had feared Raffles was neglecting things, and I told him so in a burst. Here we were near Gibraltar, and not a word since the Solent. He shook his head with a smile.
Plenty of time, Bunny, plenty of time. We can do nothing before we get to Genoa, and that won't be till Sunday night. The voyage is still young, and so are we. Let's make the most of things while we can."
It was after dinner on the promenade deck, and as Raffles spoke he glanced sharply fore and aft, leaving me next moment with a step full of purpose. I retired to the smoking room, to smoke and read in a corner, and to watch Von Human, who very soon came to drink beer and to sulk in another. Few travellers tempted the Red Sea at summer. The Ulan was very empty indeed. She had, however, but a limited supply of cabins on the promenade deck, and there was just that excuse for my sharing Raffles's room. I could have had one to myself downstairs, but I must be up above. Raffles had insisted that I should insist on the point. So we were together, I think, without suspicion, though also without any object that I could see. On the Sunday afternoon I was asleep in my berth, the lower one, when the curtains were shaken by Raffles, who was in his shirt sleeves on the settee.
Achilles skulking in his bunk?
"What else is there to do?" I asked him as I stretched and yawned. I noted, however, the good humour of his tone, and did my best to catch it.
"I have found something else, Bunny."
"I dare say."
"You misunderstand me. The whipper-snapper's making his century this afternoon. I've had another fish to fry."
I swung my legs over the side of my berth and sat forward, as he was sitting, all attention. The inner door, a grating, was shut and bolted, and curtained like the open portal.
"We shall be at Genoa before sunset,"
continued Raffles.
"It's the place where the deed's got to be done."
"So you still mean to do it?"
"Did I ever say I didn't?"
"You have said so little either way."
"Advisedly so, my dear Bunny. Why spoil a pleasure trip by talking unnecessary shop? But now the time has come. It must be done at Genoa or not at all."
"On land?"
"No, on board, to-morrow night. To-night would do, but to-morrow is better in case of mishap. If we were forced to use violence, we could get away by the earliest train, and nothing be known till the ship was sailing and Von Human found dead or drugged."
"Not dead!" I exclaimed.
"Of course not," assented Raffles, "or there would be no need for us to bolt. But if we should have to bolt, Tuesday morning is our time, when this ship has got to sail, whatever happens. But I don't anticipate any violence. Violence is a confession of terrible incompetence. In all these years how many blows have you known me to strike? Not one, I believe. But I have been quite ready to kill my man every time, if the worst came to the worst."
I asked him how he proposed to enter Von Human's stateroom unobserved, and even through the curtained gloom of ours his face lighted up.
"Climb into my bunk, Bunny, and you shall see all."
I did so, but could see nothing. Raffles reached across me and tapped the ventilator, a sort of trap-door in the wall above his bed, some 18 inches long and half that height. It opened outwards into the ventilating shaft.
"That," said he, "is our door to fortune. Open it if you like. You won't see much, because it doesn't open far, but loosening a couple of screws will set that right. The shaft, as you may see, is more or less bottomless. You pass under it whenever you go to your bath, and the top is a skylight on the bridge. That's why this thing has to be done while we're at Genoa, because they keep no watch on the bridge in port. The ventilator opposite ours is Human's. It again will only mean a couple of screws, and there's a beam to stand on while you work."
"But if anybody should look up from below?"
"It's extremely unlikely that anybody will be astir below, so unlikely that we can afford to chance it. No, I can't have you there to make sure. The great point is that neither of us should be seen from the time we turn in. A couple of ship's boys do sentry go on these decks, and they shall be our witnesses. By Jove, it'll be the biggest mystery that ever was made."
"If Von Human doesn't resist?"
"Resist? He won't get the chance. He drinks too much beer to sleep light, and nothing is so easy as to chloroform a heavy sleeper.